Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of 30 Minutes Robotic Milking Edition. I'm your host, Marcia Andrews, dairy science professor and extension specialist at the University of Minnesota in St. Paul. And with us today, we also have your co-host, Jim Sulfur, who is a dairy extension educator at the St. Cloud Regional Office. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Marcia. How are you today?
Doing good.
Cold in Minnesota.
A little cold. And we got snow and winter's here. So before we just invite our producer to join, just a few housekeeping items. If you are watching this as a YouTube webinar, a recorded webinar, and you want to join us for the live discussion next time, which is always fun because you can ask your questions and make your comments, and the producers here joining us, please register at z.eumn.edu 30 MINRM, and you'll get your unique Zoom link to join the webinars, and you'll be reminded every month for the following webinars, and also receive a link for the YouTube channel playlist that I put together where the webinars are posted. Today, to ask questions or make comments, we would ask you to use the Q&A box, not the chat box, please, so that we can read your questions on behalf of the producer, either Jim or I. So today we're very pleased to have with us Shonda from California, our first California dairy. She was very nice too last month. I was there for a field day that I hosted and that I had together with the folks in California organizing a field day. And it was really good to see this dairy, so different than Minnesota, so much more open. You're gonna see the pictures. So I'm very pleased to have you, Shonda. Please join us. And just to give that brief overview of your operation, and then we will open up for the question and answer. So thank you for being here. We very much appreciate your joining us today.
What about now?
Looks good. I can hear you. Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you see the slide? So this is your aerial view to get started with the overview of the dairy. Thank you.
Okay, so we are fourth generation dairy operation in Central California, and we started in 1942. My grandfather started with one flat barn, and then in 1953, this is the current site that we've been at since then. Then we built another flat barn in 1964, about 1,200 cows, and then all the support stock. We farm about 3,000 acres to all of our own alfalfa and silages, and we have 900 acres of almonds and a small vineyard. So today now we have about 1,600 milk and dry cows and all the support stock for that. So we decided that through the years we couldn't make any improvements. Took a long time due to family business owners that didn't want to do that, economics. And then we finally, the state mandated strict regulations on environment and environmental regulations, and the minimum wage order, overtime, work week, and lots of different things. So we were at a crossroads. Some of the family wanted to sell, and we either had to decide what we were going to do, whether dairy or not dairy or whatever, but we ended up buying out the other owners, the family owners, and decided that we would sustain the dairy business. We were going to have to find a new way of doing it, which is where we are today. We've gone from the flat barns to 24 robots in 2 barns, as you can see, and they're 150,000 square feet each. They will house about 1,700 cows, and we will grow the herd to about 2,100 cows, which is what our allowed limit is through the environmental regulations. So let's see. So okay, so yeah, so this is still in the building process. The old barn is in the front where we milk half the cows. That was built in 1953. And then to the back is all the feed area, the hay and everything that we grow on our own, and our calf raising areas back there. We raise all of our own calves and replacements. The robots have improved, the robots with the freestall barn, which is the free stalls. The free stalls are also very new to us because everything was an open corral forever. And so that management of that is all new. And so, but with the free stalls and the robots, we've managed to reduce the labor and labor related cost, improve the cow comfort for sure, and their productivity. We're more efficient and improved our operations. We've been startup in this barn. This is the first one that's been built or finished. We started this a year ago this month, and then the second startup on the other side, we started the first 6 robots, and the second 6 robots we started in December. So we're about a year in. We're a year in on this particular barn. The second one came online May of 2022 and mid-August of this year also. We're still populating, we're still transitioning. Our second, the one barn got torn down except for the very front, kind of a memorabilia thing, I guess, but the other barn west of this facility is still on to do the intake of the fresh cows and the 2-year-olds. Also, we have a few jerseys, older cows, and some 2-year-olds that didn't quite make it. They had some crazy moments in the robots. And so we took them back and we'll try them again later. So these are the sort pens. They're a little larger than what we had seen when we went to visit and do our planning and research. They have 30 beds each and 30 beds each and 25 headlocks. And I'm really glad that we did that. I've been asked why it's so big, but there's lots of room to give the cows that we're training, lots of room to kind of move around, and we can still take care of some of the ones that are having a hard time to adjust. Going from an open corral on dirt to cement is been a challenge for some of them. And but then there's still plenty of room for all the cows that we're breeding, the vet and the health checks, and just any cow that needs a little extra care. We have, excuse me. Oh, so then this is our feed, one of the feed lanes, and this is behind. The robots are to the other side of this, but this barn is about almost 500 feet long, and we have fans with some misting that goes on, and those were really great this summer because we don't have anything like that. Basically, there were really there's a few improvements made in the flat barns over the last 40 years or 50, 60 years or whatever. But we basically went from flat to robots. And so they also get, so our design. So we have the Lely robots and we have the L-shaped free flow design. And we have lots and lots of water troughs. We installed extra because in our old corrals, we had these water troughs that were probably 15 by 8 and very old, and you couldn't clean them often enough. And now the water is pretty fresh. I mean, it's fresh all the time, totally. And we also feed in the robots. We feed approximately about an average of 10 pounds of pellets a day. There's only one type of pellet that goes in. Then let's see. The robot room. So there's 4 robots in each long room, and then there's the CUs and the tanks and the water heater, and those are the air compressor tanks also. Our somatic, go ahead. Yeah, another view, this is in front of the sort pen, all those headlocks area, that's the sort pen area. And you can use that outside robot that's on the L shape. And also, if the cows, like there's not very many in there, the other cows are free to move into that and use the beds if we need to, if there's nothing that's really being treated or needs assistance or we're not training. But basically right now we're training in almost every single pen trying to populate. We need to bring in about 400 to 500 more cows until we're fully populated to the maximum. The somatic cell count has been wonderful. In the flat barns, we range, depending on the weather and the time of year, was about, we're lucky 120,000 up to 220, 250. And right now, when we did the first barn with all the 2-year-olds, we were running about 50,000 consistently for several months. We brought the older cows down to the second barn. We're running somewhere between 50 and 80,000, which is wonderful. We're very excited about that. The average milk production is increasing up. We're at 82 pounds average. It might seem kind of low to some people, but for us, that is wonderful. We managed to get a lot of cows in before the hot heat here in the valley, and we are doing about 2.9 milkings per cow per day. So this is the cow locator. So we have the cow locator, which I totally recommend for any large dairy. It is an expense, but it's well worth it. You can use the app that's on your phone or a tablet, and you put in the cow's numbers. It comes up to where she is, and if she starts moving, that number moves along with her, so you can get her and keep track of her. And it's really been a great thing. The first barn, we got it done. When the second barn came online, the locator took a little bit longer to get going. The employees were quite spoiled. They asked pretty much every day, when's it going to be ready? Because it took so long to find quite a few of them, because, you know, when we're training and that type of thing, you're fetching 4 times a day, and it took some time. The barn is each barn is almost 300 feet across and about 500 feet long. So that's a lot of distance area to cover. So anyway, but everything's working wonderful now, but I do highly recommend not build it without it. Okay, then we have 4 Junos, 2 Junos per barn. They run every 2 hours. Each trip is about 37 minutes around. And that has also been a major labor and fuel savings. Really enjoy that too, having that. And we have the cow brushes. There's 2 in each pen, and the cows really took to them really well. It's fun to watch them. And then also, whenever we moved into the free stalls, they had never been in the free stalls. And my father was afraid they'd all lay down in the lanes and that type of thing. But actually, for the most part, they took to the freestall really well. Got in the beds within a few days, or some of them pretty quick. The older cows on the second barn startup, a lot of those weren't quite sure about it. So they either stood in the bed or they laid down in the lanes, but not really having a lot of problems with that anymore.
This is excellent, Shonda.
Okay.
One thing we forgot to mention is that you are using deep solids, right? Manure, composted solids for your bedding.
Oh, yeah, the manure, yes.
So
yes.
the cows, maybe that helps coming from dry lots, which was kind of dirt, and then it go to solids. Maybe that helps a little bit.
Yeah, whenever we went to train, we, obviously we filled the barn with all the, fill the beds with the compost. We had to actually take it out of the corral and kind of work it pretty good, because we weren't able to, separator wasn't ready. So we weren't able to start making our own and then obviously get it dry in time. So we took it out of the corral they were in and really worked it pretty good, put it in. And with training with the first barn, we were able to take them in and milk them in the barn that was seen there in that photograph. The second barn, there was no training. It was pretty much a shocker. We went in, new beds, had to start milking, immediately, and the robot and the pellet. So it was kind of a shell shocker for them, but actually they adapted really well, a lot better than we anticipated. We had less people, that probably helped, and less gates as far as the training. So
excellent. Yes. Yeah, you're still kind of in the transition mode, of course, just about a year. So, but I'm glad to hear things are going well. Got a couple quick questions. One is just somebody missed the beginning. I was asking where the barn is, the farm is in California. So that's why it's so open. Yeah, very different than us here. And then the next question was, the cow locator is outstanding. Is conductivity issues with all the metal structures? I mean, having the metal structures, I think, does it affect that locator negatively at all?
No,
I know you mentioned
no.
about the fog one time, but
Yeah, the initial problems were because of where we're located. It was the Wi-Fi, because it does
Mhm.
need Wi-Fi. So we got that handled. We have a pretty, I believe at the moment, a pretty strong one and it's been working. And then also when we first started, it was November. So it got very cold, and then there was some fog. Well, we started November and then December.
Mhm.
So yes, with the fog, we were it was very cold, and that's what they were thinking. We had some problems with the locator connecting and that type of thing. So we're not quite sure if it was fog or if it was the Wi-Fi,
Mhm.
but it seemed like once the fog dissipated, the locator worked really well. So anyways, with a better upgraded Wi-Fi this season, we'll find out if
Mhm.
fog is a problem and
Right.
handle it from there. But like I said, when it's running yes, there are really no problems with it anymore. And I definitely would not consider doing this large of a project without it. But we made sure it was in the budget.
Okay. Do you remember how many of those beacons you have in the ceiling?
There are approximately, I believe there's 40
40. Wow.
each barn.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's
Because you want to be close. I mean,
yeah.
the radius is not that big.
Yeah,
Right.
they start after, so there's the sort pens and then the robot rooms, and then they start from there and go to the end every so
Okay.
many, spaced out.
Sure. Sure.
And
It's a
yeah,
big barn. Yep.
yeah.
Jim, do you have any questions? I don't see open
Yeah, I
questions.
do. You made this is really a big change. I mean, think about flat barn parlors purely to robots. Did you have any surprises, either good or bad, as you moved in? Did things you thought, wow, this is going better than we kind of had anticipated, or some things that you thought, boy, this is kind of a bad surprise? So just as you are making this transition, any comments on that you can share with the listeners?
Pretty much, I'm gonna say everything went way better than I thought it would. Like I
Okay.
said, the 2-year-olds that came in, we did those first,
Mhm.
and there was probably about 400 or 500 of those that we brought in. I mean, for the first barn, one group at a time. And I admit, I mean, I will say that they had a hard time. We put them in there. They did a lot of kicking and jumping, and some more than others. But by the time we got them through and they got mapped and they came around again, and then we just kept going, it subsided for the most part. The ones that really weren't liking it and having, that crazy eye look, we didn't want anyone to get hurt. We don't want her hurt. So we took her down to the other barn, because we're going to still have more to bring later. So we tried them again. And for the most part, when they come back, they're much more calm. But yeah, no, I'm extremely happy. It went much better than what I thought it would, because I really didn't know what to expect, except from what's talking to different people,
Mhm.
producers. And
Right. Right.
yeah.
So can you tell something about labor savings and the protocols that you're using with the robots?
Okay, so the labor savings, when in those 2 flat barns, and the average milking cows, the number of cows was about 1,300. Okay, and they were split up between, not evenly, because high producing cows were at one barn, and the 2-year-old and the cows that we ran with cleanup bulls were at the other barn. So we needed 10 milkers for that, and then 3 cow pushers, 2 to 3, depending on time of year. That does not include the feeders, calf feeders, the herdsmen. So this project was done with the financial part of it was figured out that we would need to lose about 13 people and just the wages alone, because of the state of California's increases, the mandates that have been made, because minimum wage doesn't stop at $15. It increases every year. And you have your taxes, your workers' comp premiums, and there's so much. So that alone will make the payment on that every year, the savings of all of that. And that was really a no-brainer. Bank loved it. The thing, and then there's all these other savings. We were using towels. We don't use towels. There's the fuel savings, because we're not driving around all over the place from barn to barn as much. There still is the other barn. So there was quite a few savings that we you couldn't quantify it, but we knew that we probably would be saving some money that way. The only thing that happened was COVID. It took a couple of, it took extra time to get through that because of the labor, people not being able to work, people not wanting to work. And so we did get, it did get slowed down quite a bit. And so it took twice as long to get it finished, unfortunately. So there's been an increase. So the cost savings is coming around. It's just not as quickly as we'd like. And then this past year with all the high feed prices and fuel prices and that type of thing. So we made a lot of adjustments, but everything is still moving in the right direction. We're still transitioning definitely from, I would have to say back to that other question about the part that I didn't anticipate. The one thing that was really hard was the transitioning. You have one robotic barn and then you've got everybody else at the flat barn and trying to run the schedules and the people. And that was, and then get them on board for a new thing, you know, a new technology for them to learn it. And I'm not the most technological person. So it was a challenge for me, still is at times. And some of the employees are also, but for the most part, we're all learning and doing well with that. So.
Jim, this question here, if you want to ask, and it kind of follows a bit the previous one, the protocols and stuff, if you want to ask.
Yeah, I think you
No, I'm
mentioned,
fine.
just
Yeah.
touched on it, Shonda, but in your first barn, so the barn that's down, how many times do you fetch cows? And you want to talk a little bit about your training of heifers, so kind of that whole fetching schedule and training
So,
of cows piece.
Yeah, so whenever we bring the new, like the new 2-year-olds and any new cow, you know, older cow that hasn't been there before. So we train them, they're in the sort area, separation area for about a week, and they're on a rotating schedule that we milk them 3 times a day, sometimes 4, but generally 3 times a day. And we do that for about a week. And then we let them out. As long as they're doing pretty good, they're attaching well and all that, and there's no other problems, then we send them out to what I call the general population. And they're on my fetch reminder list so that I know to, you know, kind of check them to make sure that they're still coming in. The cows, the same thing with the older new cows or more mature cow. We do the same thing, give them about a week. We are also, so now we've dried out of the first barn, obviously, and we have what we call our returnees. So when they come back in, they stay 3 to 4 days, and then also kind of keep track of them to kind of watch them and make sure, but they take they get back in the routine pretty quick. They remember, and everyone had told me that they pretty much remember, and they do. So that's been really good. So we're focusing with the fetching right now, fetching twice a day, and we're focusing on fresher cows, 120 days and under, as far as, you know, our newer ones, and some higher producing cows to make sure she gets in that robot as much as she needs to, but mainly on the fresher, newer cow to make sure she's trained. So.
Okay, so I have a question, Shonda. Since you moved your cows from dry lots to a freestyle barn with concrete and so on, and we know that food health is really key in robotic systems, as cows need to come to robot by themselves, right? They need to have good food health. So how do you manage food health? Do you have food bed at all? How do you do like hoof trimming protocols, things like that?
Yeah, so, okay, so there's a foot bath at the end of every pen. So there's 8 total. So we run the foot bath 3 times a week. We is wide enough where you can get 2 cows at a time through, so it doesn't take too time. It coincides when we are addressing maintaining the beds, the freestall beds. So we just move them around, not as, you know, we don't want to move them any more than we have to. So we also do walkthroughs when they're fetching, see if there's any cows limping or, you know, having a little problem, and bring her up to the sort area to, you know, assess her and see what we need to do. Hoof trimmer comes once a week. He is actually located on the other barn, so at the old barn. So right now we have to trailer them to him.
Oh, okay.
It's about a half a mile. And there is a lane they can walk down, but if they have sore feet or legs, and it's generally been the older cows, probably like 4th, 5th lactation or better. I mean, we have some 7th and 8th lactation cows that have come to the robot barn. I mean, basically it's any and there, the goal is to get as many in as we can. And if she's got sound legs and feet and her udder's wonderful, then we try her. So there's been obviously there's a few that, the hooves are a little worn. They're having a little problem. So every week we have the hoof trimmer take a look. And if she needs to rest out on the dirt down there, then she does for a few days, and we kind of assess it, and then we'll bring her back. For the most part, most of them come back and do fairly well. There's a few, I'll be honest, that don't quite make it. And since I do have a small, about 70 cows down there that are still, they'll be transitioning out at some point or transitioning to the robot barn. So we can do that as long as, obviously she's productive. And
Sure, makes sense. And I think you mentioned maybe, Shonda, but you're adding more bedding. How many times a week?
We bring bedding in twice. Well, we do one barn at a time. So twice a week we come in.
Twice a week you put bedding, and that's when you're making them go.
Once a week per barn is what we do. We're doing, because you're populating, so there's not as many cows. So we were kind of assessing it. Do we need to do this every week? We do go through and clean the beds and rake, and we do use some lime to try to help dry some areas out, and then cover it and whatever. But like I said, this is we've been in it to a year, but it's still pretty new. And so we're seeing what works. So the thing right now is that we do the composting. We go through and fill the beds every other week. They go through 3 times a week, and I call it rototill them, flip them. And we put some lime in there before, so it kind of gets mixed in there to kind of dry it out. But we're still working on that. I mean, it's winter's coming, so we'll see what happens with that. Because last winter we only had the 1 barn, and now we've got 2.
Sure.
So we may need to probably make some adjustments, but every other week for sure. And then the next week we take a good look. Okay, do we need to refill, or what do we need to do? But we're constantly moving it around, flipping the compost.
Sure. Jim, there's quite a few questions that showed up. So we'll get one before we stop recording, and then we'll get the other 2 afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, do you want to comment on feeding through your robots? Is it a pellet? Is it not a pellet? And then also costs. Have your costs changed a lot since you've been, kind of with that robot feed cost particularly?
Okay. So we are feeding the pellet in the robots. It averages about 10 pounds. We've got some at 6, 7, and then we've got some cows that are producing enough. They're getting 16 pounds. Okay. So, but the average is about 10. The cost, whenever we first started in this project, it was much cheaper, but over the last year and a half, things have really increased, which we're trying, we got to make adjustments here and there. So, but all of our commodities, like I said, we do we grow our own alfalfa hay and all the silages. We use sorghum for silage, and we have some haylage, some wheat, and winter forage. So we grow all of that on our, for ourselves, which has worked out really well. It's been a lifesaver during hard economic times. Then we do buy some commodities and mix to put in like a pre-mix type thing, to complement the pellet. Yes, but the prices have gone up quite a bit, just because of what's going on in the country, the world, or whatever, which is, we didn't really plan on that big of an increase, but we'll make it through.
Excellent. So I want to just stop the recording soon here. So I just want to thank everyone for attending today episode of 30 Minutes Robotic Milking Edition. Especially thank you, Shonda, for joining us. And I hope we can stay a couple more minutes we have a couple more questions to answer. And I invite everybody to come back for next episode, December 15th. So thank you again for joining us today, and hope to see you again.